you're confusing crimes together. You're confusing crimes together.
Well, no, I'm just saying that when you
the point
pay,
I want to make,
if you pay people off, well,
can I make my point?
Yeah, sure.
That's not the
pay her off
through Michael Cohen or someone else.
Paid her off.
Yeah, but that's a normal settlement.
Yeah, but why did he pay her off? Is my point.
He didn't do a campaign finance violation.
Why did he pay her off?
Piers, he didn't do a campaign finance violation, and he didn't do business fraud. If you're saying, hold on,
was the same.
If you're saying.
On the most recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored, the self-professed nonpartisan commentator bent over backwards to try to defend convicted felon Donald Trump in ways that were so egregiously dishonest that he actually made unlikely allies out of two outspoken critics of Joe Biden and the Democrats, the first being Trump's own former national security advisor John Bolton, and the second being progressive political commentator Cenk Uygur, and each of them shut down Piers's dishonesty in back-to-back heated exchanges, and we have to talk about it. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to look at here. Piers Morgan is a frequent topic of this channel because I think when he's at his best, which is very rarely these days, he's actually a pretty good moderator and interviewer. But when it comes to domestic politics, he grades Donald Trump and the Republicans on an absurd curve that he would never tolerate for the opposing side. And if you have any doubts about that, you need only look at this most recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored, in which he just blatantly carries water for his old pal Donald Trump. And it's so bad that he made allies out of John Bolton and Cenk Uygur. Talk about like the least likely, I don't know, Marvel Cinematic Universe lineup. It'd be like an alliance between Thor and Thanos. It's really crazy stuff. We're going to play the John Bolton part first because Bolton, of course, is conservative and worked for Donald Trump. He actually understands Donald Trump politically in a much more intimate capacity than Piers Morgan because he worked for the Trump administration. And I want to play this exchange and then we'll unpack it together.
Should it have been brought at all, this case, given the relative triviality of it? Ultimately, it's about paying hush money to a porn star for an alleged one-night stand nearly 20 years ago when he was a TV star and real estate magnate, not a politician. If the bar is set that low for dragging an American president through a criminal prosecution and making him sit in a courtroom for 2 months, inevitably, Republicans are going to want to return the favor and do this to the Democrats. How does any of that going forward help America?
Well, the crime that the underlying crime is cooking the books of his company.
Right.
That is the financial fraud involved. To me,
but that is a state misdemeanor,
isn't
it? I mean, really. I mean, you could construct an argument, for example, when Bill Clinton paid off Paula Jones over sexual harassment allegations, he's doing that to protect his reputation. That could have a material effect on an election. I mean, once you take that argument, you can pretty much
you're confusing crimes together. You're confusing crimes together.
Well, no, I'm just saying that when you
the point I want to make,
if you pay people off, well,
can I make my point?
Yeah, sure.
That's not the. Yeah, here. Well, yeah. Why don't I hang on? I've been waiting for 40 minutes to get on here. You know, what this shows is not the criminal conviction point, but the lack of character point. I don't think there are many American voters who have ever even seen a porn star in person, let alone slept with them, let alone paid hush money. And I think when they think of their children and grandchildren, this is not the model they want for the generations coming along. That is the impact, quite apart from the conviction, of having this sleazy, tawdry lifestyle of Donald Trump out there in front of the American people.
And do you think that?
So at Bolton's case is, listen, the conviction is actually for a legitimate crime, not just simply hushing up a porn star and trying to avoid any like tawdry implications in the press. But there's also that factor to consider when Americans go to the ballot box. Now, I don't know to what extent that particular part, the lack of morality, the lack of marriage ethics for Donald Trump, I have no idea to what extent that will play a role in the upcoming election. But again, what it shows is that Piers Morgan is almost determined to misunderstand why Trump was convicted and to use President Clinton as an example and Paula Jones. These notions are comparable. They're not. As Cenk Uygur, who is also a practicing, well, I don't know if he's a practicing, but he is an educated attorney, he actually tries to walk Piers through this because he sees that John Bolton was not successful in making Piers Morgan understand that his understanding of the case is just completely flawed. So Cenk Uygur takes a crack at it immediately after.
Yeah, so listen, the Paula Jones point you're making drives me crazy. So let me address that real quick, and then I'm going to answer that question. Paula Jones was a lawsuit. It was settled. There was no hiding the money and paying it through Michael Cohen or someone else.
Paid her off.
Yeah, but that's a normal settlement.
Yeah, but why did he pay her off? He didn't do a campaign finance violation. Why did he pay her off?
But Piers, he didn't do a campaign finance violation, and he didn't do business fraud. If you're saying, hold on.
The purpose was the same.
If you're saying they were both immoral, sure, of course, I don't care. And by the way, I also don't care about their immorality. I don't care that Donald Trump slept with a porn star at all.
No.
That's his personal business.
No.
The problem is the campaign finance violations and the business fraud.
I understand,
which
but my point,
didn't do.
yeah, but my point, just on that, is that the similarity is that they both paid off women to protect their political reputations. That's the similarity.
But I don't care about that at all. I don't care that either one of them did it. I only care if they break the law.
My point is one got taken through a criminal trial, and yet the other one, Bill Clinton, to me,
because Clinton didn't do anything criminal in paying off Paula Jones. That's the most normal settlement in American history. By the way, there's other people that did do things wrong in the Clinton era. Sandy Berger stuffed national secrets into his socks, and you know what they did to him? They tried him. And Donald Trump took national secrets, and they're trying them. If you break the law, you get tried. But to your question about...
So Cenk Uygur was getting so fed up there. And this was like an hour into this big elaborate episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. And he's trying to say, listen, Donald Trump was not charged nor convicted for paying a porn star hush money. If he had done that legally, there are legal ways to do it. And again, Cenk Uygur cites the example with Bill Clinton and Paula Jones. They created a legal settlement. Money was exchanged legally in ways that didn't violate, campaign finance laws. Donald Trump didn't do it legally. That's the whole point. That's why he was convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. Bill Clinton didn't falsify business records. That's the thing. That's, again, Piers is like, he is almost deliberately trying to misunderstand the entire case and the conviction against Trump to make it sound ridiculous. He's creating a straw man for the benefit of his right-wing audience. But that's why this situation is better described as an election interference case and not a porn star hush money case, right? It allows Morgan and others like him to create straw men. And it's so funny to see that, again, that infuriated John Bolton, a conservative, hawkish, former Trump national security advisor who hates Joe Biden, hates the Democrats, and has only ever worked exclusively for Republicans. And it also infuriated Cenk Uygur, who also hates Democrats and Joe Biden. They just strange bedfellows indeed that Piers Morgan's dishonesty was able to create this unlikely alliance. I want to play one more clip here as well from another panelist on Piers Morgan Uncensored, in which she makes the case that, whether or not Piers Morgan thinks this is a particularly sensational case or a particularly high profile case, that Donald Trump still violated the law. And regardless of its high profile nature or lack thereof, or regardless of the fact that he is an ex-president, it doesn't matter. The law should have been served. And indeed it was.
My view, as I said there, is I think of all the 4 cases that he was facing, this was by far the weakest. I think it was a massive stretch to try and turn it into a felony. And I think because of that, because Bragg is clearly such a partisan guy, that is playing right into Trump's hands to play the martyr, and it will galvanize his base. We saw last night that the funding websites were literally breaking down because people were donating so much money. Could this not have the complete opposite effect that at the moment gleeful Democrats hope, which is that it might propel him back to the White House?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, I think. Starting with the end, of course it could propel him back to the White House. And of course his fundraising is likely to have gone up through the roof, skyrocketed since the verdict came out. I think I'd agree with you that it's the weakest of the 4 cases. I think when we first heard the charges from Alvin Bragg, a lot of us were kind of raising our eyes at the number of them, 34. It was actually consistently the same charge, but brought on sort of different dates. And I think that still remains. It is the weakest of the 4 charges, but it is still the one that was before the courts. And it is still the one that was before the jury. And essentially, you're giving us the New York Post monologue, Piers, which I think is that if you decide that the whole thing is rigged, which Trump has been doing way, way before these cases even came to court, way, way before the 2020 election was fought, he's used the word rigged against them the whole time, then clearly you're just going to propel that narrative to a place where you're feeling happy with it. I think that what happened in the court yesterday was that a jury who had been selected independently, gone through the ringer pretty much to assert their nuances and their leanings and all the rest of it, unanimously came to the conclusion that with the evidence put before them, including documentary evidence, he was guilty of those charges. Now, I think America will decide what they do with that. But I think if you're going to start undermining the rule of law, you set yourself against the American people. You set yourself against the people who have decided that they want to believe in the rule of law, even for presidents.
Again, I think that's a great point, which is that, again, Trump pre-framed this and Trump supporters pre-framed this from the beginning, that everything's rigged. He does this with elections. He does it with the law. Everything's rigged. In his mind, he can't possibly lose. He's perfect. He's infallible. And in the mind of his supporters as well. So anything that doesn't go his way, there must be some sort of like sinister conspiracy behind it. And again, I think that the case is just well made, that this is a matter of law, regardless if you think it's insufficient in terms of it's not sexy enough, it's not sufficiently threatening to national security to justify going after a former president. At the end of the day, Donald Trump is not royalty. He is a former president. He's not even the current president. And this is, I think, where Piers Morgan, as a citizen of the United Kingdom, struggles to understand this. In the United Kingdom, the king is sovereign, literally above the law. That's why they say they refer to the crown when there's prosecution, that the crown is engaging in prosecution. That's why, the military, the royal military, they swear an oath of allegiance to the reigning monarch, not to Parliament, not to the British Constitution. In theory, in constitutional law, yes, even in 2024, the monarch is sovereign and the sovereign is above the law. We don't have a sovereign here in the United States. The president is not sovereign. The president is merely chief executive, and this is key. And Donald Trump is not the chief executive. He's a former chief executive. Pierce really has to start getting his head around that. Okay, Donald Trump is just, as far as the law is concerned, on paper, he's just an everyday citizen who just happens to have Secret Service protection. That's it, and that's how he should be treated. Let me know what you think in the comments.